everyone, it's Victoria here. I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about hydration, and it's important not just in performance but also just in life in general. Coming into the off season, we're not as active, it's cold in so many places, and oftentimes hydration is very much not thought about, just in general. I mean, how many of you have went through the day without drinking water before 10 or 11 in the morning? You wake up, you have coffee or your juice or whatever it is that you have, and you forget about the water. Then you have coffee and maybe another glass of water or some sort of fluid, and then you go on throughout the day and you still don't have too much till dinner. So a lot of times if we're not working out, we're not feeling too thirsty, we forget to drink. And we also forget that the recommended amount of fluid intake is 64 ounces or 8 glasses of fluids a day. Why is hydration so important? Why is this goal of 8 glasses a day or 64 ounces so important? You could see here on the screen, it increases energy, it increases metabolism, it maintains pH in the body, helps digestion, it's great for joints, helps muscle function and repair, and so much more. Hydration is key to life. We can't obviously live without water. Why is that though? So here you can see in this chart, I got it from bodybuilding.com, that 70% of the body, first of all, is made of water, is comprised of water. So 70% of the entire body, your entire body mass, is water. And here in this chart you can see it breaks down what exactly is comprised of water. What parts of the body is comprised of water? Because when people say 70% of the body is comprised of water, a lot of times people think, okay, so you're telling me that I drink water and that's 70% of my body weight? Yeah, right. Well, yeah, of course, no. Here you can see in all these little compartments what takes water in your body, what needs water, what's made of water, and how much of that is water, how much of that stored is water. So in the brain, 75% of your brain is water. Your blood, 83% of your blood is water. Your bones, 22% of your bones are water. Did you know that? Your muscles are 75% water. Imagine that. They're not just tissue, they're water. And then also in this chart you can see how water helps in the body. It helps regulate body temperature. In kidneys, it helps remove waste. In your cartilage, it aids in cushioning joints. In your lungs, it helps for breathing. It helps carrying oxygen to the cells. In your stomach, it helps convert the food. It helps digest the food. It acts as a cushion. It absorbs nutrients in your intestines. So you can see in this chart just how important water really is, and the fact that when people say your body's 50 to 70% of water, they don't just mean the water that you're drinking. They mean the compartments in your body that have water in them, and it's stored for use. Here's just another chart I thought was kind of cool to see. Basically, your body weight is 50 to 70% water. So for an example here, I wrote a 150-pound person. That means 75 to 105 pounds of water is in your body. Once again, that does not mean from what you drink. Obviously, you're not going to drink 75 to 105 pounds of water. But here you can see the blood, brain, muscles, and cells, how much of them are comprised of water, and this is why, and this is what equals to that percentage of water. This is why hydration is so important. Your cells, your muscle, your brain, your blood, all that stuff, it does not just magically have fluid in them. You have to still intake the fluid, and you have to intake electrolytes to keep the fluid within those areas, or else you suffer from dehydration or hypohydration, and that's when it becomes an emergency. For hydration and performance, obviously we know it's important to stay hydrated. In paddleboarding, or actually many sports, a lot of times we only get a break here and there, like on the basketball court, or in paddleboarding we don't bring our pack unless it's over X amount of time, or some people don't bring it at all. But why is it so important to stay hydrated, and especially in performance? Dehydration equals a deficit in body water. So that's what it means, to be dehydrated. Which means you have a decreased plasma volume. So you have hypovolemia. okay? When that happens, when you have not enough fluid in your body at one period of time, it increases cardiovascular strain, it increases your heart rate, it lowers your output, it increases your body core temperature because you're not able to sweat as much. You don't have as much blood flow coming out of your heart to your skin, so you can't sweat. And it increases fatigue. And what does that do for performance? It obviously reduces your performance. So hypohydration can greatly reduce performance, especially when it exceeds 2 to 3% of your body mass loss. So that person that weighs 150 pounds that we talked about, a 2 to 3% body mass loss in water is 3 to 4.5 pounds. So a lot of times you'll hear people saying, oh, I lost 3 pounds after that workout today. Well, that's how you measure your hydration status and how much you lose. Of course, it all depends, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but if they lose 3 to 4.5 pounds at 150 pounds, after that, if they don't hydrate, it's going to greatly reduce their performance, and it's not, obviously, as athletes, what we want. So water is, it's not just water that we have to think about for performance. We want to think about, a lot of people drink the sports supplements, the sports drinks and things, and that's what we want to make sure we focus on, because we don't want to become hyperhydrated with just water. We want to make sure that we have and include enough electrolytes for sports performance, especially sodium. There's a lot of great factors that sodium helps with, and a lot of times us as athletes, we don't focus enough on sodium because throughout life we've always been taught that sodium is bad for you. Sodium leads to cardiovascular disease. Sodium, sodium, sodium. Well, as athletes, we're sweating a lot more. We're moving a lot more. Our body needs the sodium. So we need to focus on our sodium intake depending on our output. What does sodium do? Sodium helps with stimulating thirst, which is good because then we get thirsty and we want to drink more, so we have to drink more, and then we become hydrated. And it also maintains proper fluid electrolyte balance in all compartments. So all those compartments that we saw in that image previously, it'll help with the balance in those compartments. So with that being said, because the salt helps keep the water in your body, it keeps the water in your heart, which helps support cardiovascular function. It keeps the body water, for example, in your renal, so it helps stimulate renal fluid retention and decreases urine loss, which is good because the less you pee, we don't want to be peeing all the time, because then the more we're peeing, the more fluids we're losing, the more sodium we're losing, the more we have to intake because we need to stay hydrated, right? So we want to make sure that we get enough sodium to help keep those compartments full of water so we can properly function. So what are some factors affecting sweat rate? Well, the top three really are exercise intensity, body size, and environmental conditions. And environmental conditions is one of the top ones. Obviously, depending on the temperature, the humidity, the sun, the wind, you're going to sweat more or less. People in a humid environment or a hot environment are going to sweat a lot more when they're properly hydrated than those who are in a cooler environment. But I wanted to stress this today, especially since we're in December, that just because you're in a cool environment does not mean you don't have to hydrate. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we are in cooler environments, we don't drink enough throughout the day at all because we're not thirsty, we're not hot. And then we go and exercise, and we're exercising with a decreased amount of fluid. And whether or not you become dehydrated or feel the symptoms of dehydration, it still can and will affect your performance. So keep in mind that even when it's cold outside, you still need to intake 64 ounces or whatever your goal of fluids is throughout the day. That does not change. What else affects your sweat rate? If you're acclimated to the heat, some people are not acclimated to the heat. Some people are more acclimated to the heat and maybe don't sweat as much. Your fitness level, sometimes when you start stepping it up some, you're going to start sweating more. Your body's going to be getting hotter and you're going to start sweating more. Your clothing and equipment worn, this is a big thing also. We like to wear sometimes tight-fitting clothes, which is great. Sometimes it's not so great. It depends on the evaporation of the clothing. hydration status. Are you already hydrated? If you're really hydrated, you might sweat more. Also, genetics. Some people sweat more than others. You can put two people in the same environment and one person is going to have a higher sweat rate than another. So there's a lot of things that affect sweat rate, and you should be paying attention to that individually to understand yourself and your body. Of course, we're not going to know exactly, but you should, and you probably do know if you're a heavy sweater or not, right? And if you don't, it's time to start paying attention. So what are some signs and symptoms of dehydration? You can see here in the list: dry mouth, lack of saliva, dizziness, inability to sweat or urinate, a rapid heart rate, delirium, hopefully it doesn't get that far, altered mental status, and loss of consciousness. Most of the time as athletes, we do experience a state of dehydration at one point or another. How many times have you been in a race and all of a sudden your mouth gets dry and you have no more saliva? Hopefully it doesn't go into the dizziness, especially while you're performing. But if you already are thirsty, it's probably, I don't want to say too late, but you're probably already on the brink of dehydration. So you want to make sure that you drink before you feel thirsty. I've gotten into a habit to start to drink within 15 to 20 minutes of my race, no matter what. No matter what, have a drink. When you pull up different urine charts on the internet, you can see there's just so many ways that people put them out. So here's one that I found. It kind of shows the color of urine. It sounds gross to talk about, but it's important to pay attention to. You can see here the colors range from a lighter yellow or almost white to a really dark orange yellow. And obviously the goal is to keep it in that almost white zone. So after you pee, especially when you wake up in the morning, you should definitely check the color of your urine, and throughout the day too. I'm sure many of you have seen, or everybody has seen, all of these different colors. So here you can see in this little chart, and just take a second or a screenshot to look at kind of what it means and some goals to help get you to that lighter color. So as an athlete, and really anybody in general, the first thing that you want to think about in the morning before breakfast is how hydrated are you? And if you're hypohydrated, you're going to answer yes to most of these questions. So if you weigh yourself in the morning, or if you feel like you're having a problem with hydration, you should weigh yourself in the morning. And is your body mass greater than 1% lower than normal? So if your body mass is more than 1% lower than what it normally is, you might be hypohydrated. And is my urine dark yellow? Yes or no? You can see here in the chart, if you have one or two of those, it's likely that you're hypohydrated. If you have one or two of the urine and are you thirsty, it's likely. If you have one of are you thirsty and one is if your body mass is lower, it's likely. And if you have all three, obviously you can see in the middle here, it's very likely that you're hypohydrated. What does that mean? Drink some water, drink something. That's it. It's not too difficult. You just got to make sure you drink. I've gotten in the habit of drinking a glass of water at least before I have my coffee. So that way at least I know once I get on my coffee kick and I want to have the whole pot, that at least I've gotten a glass of water. And I try to have more than one glass of water, but that's my thing that I do in the morning. So I don't know if you guys want to try it, but it definitely helps. For performance, proper planning is necessary for hydration. We focus a lot on macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats on our race strategy and our recovery strategy, but we need to also plan for hydration. And most of the time people just grab their water pack, put water in it, stick it on their back, but we really need to plan better than that. If you haven't hydrated properly in the day, you definitely need to plan better than that, because at least if you're not ever hydrating properly, you can properly hydrate for your exercise during that time. So you can see here that you want to begin properly hydrated, meaning 2 to 3 hours before your workout, aim for at least 17 to 20 ounces of water or fluid. an electrolyte balance. Use a personalized fluid intake strategy based on specific conditions, like time, intensity, environment, the things that we talked about a few slides ago. And this can range from 0.5 liters to 2 liters an hour. So it depends on everything that we talked about in the sweat rate slide a few slides ago. Depends on how much per hour, how many liters per hour you want to intake. Drink enough fluid to prevent greater than 2% dehydration, especially in warm weather. So even when you're exercising or training or racing, you want to still hydrate throughout the event so that way you can prevent dehydration or cramping or even worse, passing out or getting dizzy or something, having to stop your event. Drink up during your race. Don't overconsume fluids during exercise. If you're not using a supplement that has an electrolyte intake in there, like a sodium or a tailwind, a lot of the sports drinks have electrolyte mixes in there. If you're just having water throughout exercise, don't overconsume fluids if it's just water. It will affect the sodium balance in your system, which does affect your muscle contractions and your cardiovascular contractions. So you want to make sure that you're at least consuming fluids that have electrolytes in them. But if you're not, watch it with just the water. Don't overconsume. And then consume fluids with sodium if exercise is greater than an hour and a half in hot weather and or if your sweat rate is high. So if you're a person that sweats a lot and you know it, just make sure that you properly replace the sodium that you are getting rid of when you sweat. It's a lot to think about, but of course, it's just something that's individualized. We just have to pay attention to our bodies, and if we do, you'll be fine. You'll understand yourself a little more. So thinking outside the water glass, there are a lot more things during the day. People are like, I'm dehydrated all the time because I hate drinking water. Well, guess what? There's water in fruits, there's water in vegetables. Here you can see a list. Fruits such as watermelon, grapes, oranges, apples, other like grapefruits or tangerines, things like that, have a high amount of water. So you can eat those, and that counts as fluid intake through the day. That counts as however much you're having some fluid. Yes, there is fluid. It's not like drinking a whole glass of liquid, but there is fluid in those items. Same thing with vegetables. Cucumbers, peppers, lettuce, tomatoes. There's a high amount of water in those veggies. And between fruits and vegetables, you can easily get about, if you're eating the proper amount, about 20% of your intake that's needed throughout the day. So that's a pretty good amount without having to sit there and drink 20% more liquids, right? For drinks, it's not just water. You can have milk, vegetable or fruit juice. Try to aim for 100% vegetable juice and like little amounts of fruit juice, because obviously we know they contain a lot of sugar, or even powders that you add to your drink for example, when you're working out, like a tailwind supplement. Those count. Okay, so think outside the water glass. Basically, the goal for today was just to remind you to hydrate, 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 not for performance, but for life. You can see it can affect you in so many negative ways if you don't. And when it's cold outside, like it is now, we need to be even more mindful of how we hydrate, because it's still important. It still affects our performance. It still affects our functioning. And we just want to come into the season strong. So we got to keep strong all around.